Today we're talking about MLA style citations. So in MLA style, it's actually a citation system that has two parts. There's what we call the InText Citation, which is what we're going to be talking about, and then there's what we call a works cited page. In some other paper writing formats, they call that the bibliography, but in MLA format, we call that works cited. We're not going to worry about a works cited page because we just have one source, and generally that's going to be the case for us. We'll have one or two sources, and we're all going to be working from the same sources. So we're not going to worry about a works cited page this year. We do need, however, to work on the other part of the system, which is the InText citation. So in text, meaning it's in your text. That's why they call it an InText citation. So it's the part that goes in the parentheses. That's called an InText citation. So it's part of a system. All right, so in InText citations, there are a couple of requirements. One, if it is words or an idea that are not yours, so that's even if you're just summarizing something that was somebody else's idea, but you put it in your own words, if it's not your idea and they're not your words or they're not your words, you have to cite it. You have to. Otherwise, you're plagiarizing, and we will talk more about that at another time. But if you're copying something down from Jennifer Choldenko's book, Al Capone Does My Shirts, you need to cite that with an InText citation. Your InText citation must include two things. One, an author's name. Okay, if there are exceptions if that's not available, but generally speaking, we're going to have authors' names available. And then secondly, the page number where the idea, if you summarized or paraphrased, or quote can be found. Okay, we need the page number to be part of your citation, which you're pretty well aware of already. So those are the requirements. If it's not your idea or your words, it has to have a citation. Citations have to have an author's name and a page number. That's what we need to know about the requirements for MLA style InText citations. So the standard parenthetical citation is pretty simple and straightforward. If you look at this example, we have a direct quote here. With each post, tag, and comment, you provide a piece of information about yourself. Together, these pieces create a picture of who you are, your interests, your hobbies, your opinions, where you like to shop, who your friends are. Notice that there's no punctuation inside those quotation marks right there. Now, that's kind of like dialogue in some cases, but kind of not. So MLA style citations kind of have their own rules that don't necessarily match up with dialogue rules. Okay, so we're pretty much just learning a brand new set of rules. All right, so then you can see in these parentheses, we've got Lewis, that's my author's last name. And then you see there's nothing between my author's last name and the page number. You're not going to abbreviate the word page. You're not going to put a comma there. You're not going to put a pound sign, or in your case, hashtag, there to say, oh, well, it's number 13. None of that is necessary. You need your parentheses, and inside your parentheses, you need your author's last name and the number of the page. That is all. There is nothing else. And then you can see, if you look carefully at that, there's a period after the parentheses. So in MLA style, the punctuation always goes after the citation. The punctuation always goes after the citation in a standard parenthetical citation. There are examples of this. It's actually the exact same example on page 5 of your MLA format handbook. Okay, your MLA style guide has examples of this on page 5. Most of the examples we're going to be talking about today are on page 5. So there's the first. Let's look at the second one. We don't always have to use a standard parenthetical citation. We can do something a little bit different. We can actually use a transition at the beginning, and we call these transitions signal phrases because they signal to our reader that we're switching voices. We're switching from our voice as the writer to our source's voice as the writer. Okay, so if we look at this one, Kristen Lewis warns. So in pink there, I've got that's my author's name. I've already used my author's name in that signal phrase. So Kristen Lewis warns, comma, heading into this quote here, Anyone can take a screenshot, even of something you post in a private group, chat, text, or app, and post it on another site where you have no control over it. End quotation marks are there. Notice there's no punctuation inside them because the punctuation goes after the parenthetical citation. And that parenthetical citation just has the number 13 inside because in my signal phrase at the beginning, I already used my author's name. So I have my author's name in the signal phrase, and then I have my page number in the parenthetical citation. And so that is a complete InText citation for MLA style. And this is actually the one that I prefer because it has that built-in signal phrase. So it's like you have a transition there, right, between your words and the author's words. And it just makes it a little more smooth rather than just dropping quotes on me. So this is actually the preferred method, using that signal phrase at the beginning and then putting the page number in parentheses at the end. Now, one note about using your author's name. Your author's name, well, you are not friends with your author, right? You've never met Jennifer Choldenko. Don't argue with me, you haven't. So Jennifer Choldenko is not your friend. So you're not gonna say Jennifer wrote, you're gonna say Choldenko wrote because you are not on a first name basis. You're gonna call her by her last name because this is a formal paper. This is formal writing, so you're going to use her last name. So generally the rule is that on first reference, so the first time you mention Jennifer Choldenko, you're going to use her first and last name. You should have already done that in the introduction. So anytime in the body paragraphs that you use a signal phrase parenthetical citation, you can just say Choldenko. If you want to say Jennifer Choldenko all the way through, you can, but you should never just say Jennifer. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So signal phrase and parenthetical citation is really, from my perspective, the best way to go for your citations. They're also pretty easy. So then the last thing that I want to show you, because I don't anticipate that you're going to use the ones on 5 until you get to the bottom of page 6. The bottom of page 6 is the citation style for a quote within a quote. Okay, so that would be in a situation where, let's say you're quoting, Moose has some narration, and then it goes into a line of dialogue. So in that line of dialogue, there are already quotation marks there. So now what do you do? Well, if you are quoting a quote, you're going to put double quotation marks, so like the regular 2 quotation marks, around what you're quoting, and then anything that the original author had in quotation marks, you're going to put in single quotes. So what we would normally use as an apostrophe, it's actually set up to format as a set of single quotes as well. So you'll put your whole quote in double quotes, and then you'll put Jennifer Choldenko's quote in single quotes inside that. So there's actually an example of that. There's an example in your text. It's actually from Al Capone Does My Shirts. You can see at the very beginning there, you've got double quotes, and then you've got a single quote, Natalie, comma, because that would have been there in the original, and then single quote, because that's all Moose said. That's all she had. That's all Jennifer Choldenko had in quotation marks. So there's a single quote there, and then my mouth tries to say, but my throat is closed up tight. End quote, and that's the end of my quote, so that's a double quote. And then I did a standard citation here, Choldenko 147. Notice I did not put a comma in there. I did not put a hashtag in there. I did not put a P period in there. None of that. It's the author's name, space, page number. That's what goes in your parentheses. And then at the end of your parentheses, you put the end punctuation of period for the whole sentence. All right, so that's what you need to know about MLA InText citation style for this particular essay. So if you have questions, look back at your text, okay? There are examples there that show you exactly how to do this in your MLA style guide in your ELA binder. So use that to help you, okay? It's a good idea for you to start figuring out how to use a resource that you have in front of you. I am a resource and Mrs. Hoffman is a resource, but I'm not always gonna be there, right? So you need to learn how to use this text to help you complete your assignments. All right? If you really get stuck, let me know and I'll help out. Good luck.